Few people thought that the Vietnam War would escalate into a full-fledged war in 1965. The American bombing of unidentified targets inside Laos is one of the first indications of what is to come. In the middle of the day, military fighter jets fly over a rural farming area, dropping bombs all over the fields and obliterating every house and crop in their path. A pre-mission briefing is attended by pilot Dengler and his Navy squadron aboard the USS Ranger in the Gulf of Tonkin. To sever the supply line for the enemy, the squadron must fly over northern Vietnam. The squad is reminded that they are not allowed to discuss the mission with anyone, not even their family and close friends, because it is classified. The squad watches a short survival video to get ready for their mission. It shows how to hide with leaves and attract an airplane, but they mostly laugh it off as ridiculous. Dengler requests a secret flap on his Navy boots so he can conceal his American passport while on the mission because they are allowed to request modifications to the supplies and gear they are bringing with them. The squad leader provides his final reassurances regarding the security of their operations during the final briefing. The military has been receiving reports that the enemies have been able to intercept their radio signals, using them to lure rescuers into an ambush. So he advises the squad against using their military radio on the field when they find themselves in danger. Dengler is selected to lead the mission during the meeting. Dengler and his closest friends perform a customary act the day before the mission in which they place their foreheads against the wall to wish each other luck. 4 fighter jets then took off in the direction of Laos and North Vietnam. The locals opened fire as soon as the squad begins bombing the target area, hitting Dengler's jet and causing it to start falling. Dengler uses his excellent piloting abilities to crash land his jet and jump off to safety on the ground as the left wing gradually tears off. As his Lao adversaries approach, Dengler runs through the field toward the jungle to take cover. He hides beneath a mass of plants after watching the video and doesn't emerge until the soldiers have moved on in another direction. He then retreats deeper into the jungle, leaving his military radio hidden beneath a pile of leaves. He eventually comes across an abandoned building where he steals what little food he can find in a pot and starts to sleep in his plastic bag while constantly covering it with leaves. He is cautious to emerge from hiding when he hears a U.S. military helicopter flying nearby, but he must first wait for a local family to pass before doing so. The helicopter has already taken off by the time he scales a rock to try to attract its attention with a small mirror. After that, Dengler makes a pit stop to cool off in a river, but the Lao forces are able to surround him and capture him due to this diversion. Dengler is initially taken to a nearby residential community where no one speaks English. Dengler has to use the restroom in his pants because he is imprisoned in the middle of the village and no one will listen to his request. He spends the entire day there lying on the ground while the locals treat him like a zoo animal, and one youngster even plays tricks on him by holding an insect in front of his face. The following morning, Dengler is taken away once more, and the group now travels across a bridge to a different area of the jungle. Dengler observes the men make a fire when they pause to rest in order to understand their method. Even though there were occasionally passing helicopters, the men always drag Dengler into the bushes to hide from view. The captors also take advantage of the opportunity to torment Dengler during these breaks. They tie him to a tree and shoot at him, never hitting him on purpose because the only goal is to mess with his head and temporarily render him deaf. They finally reach another village and throw Dengler into a truck to transport him to the Laotian capital after much field walking and helicopter hiding. Dengler is then forced into a posh home where he meets the local governor. The governor, in contrast to the soldiers, is kind to Dengler, speaks English, and even offers to give Dengler some water. He is unconcerned by the explosions that can be heard outside. Dengler initially tries to hide the fact that he is an American Navy officer, but the governor can tell when he is lying, so Dengler is forced to reveal the truth by producing the U.S. passport he had concealed in the boot flap. The governor then offers Dengler safety and freedom in exchange for his signature on a statement denouncing America and its conflict with the Lao people. Dengler is exiled after refusing to act against his own nation. Following this, Dengler suffers severe injuries after being dragged through the village while being tied to a farm animal. Then they hang him upside down from a tree while shaking and spinning him. Finally, he is repeatedly pushed underwater while being placed inside a well. Later, after being taken to a prison camp, Dengler is forced to sleep inside a shack with his feet bound by a large restraint after having his shoes removed. From behind the wall, Dengler can hear voices warning him to avoid tampering with the guards because they are potentially dangerous. The next morning, Dengler is allowed to explore the camp at his leisure and gets to know his fellow war prisoners. While De Bruin and Martin are fellow American pilots, YC, Fysit, and Prosit are foreigners. Some of them have been here for years, much to Dengler's surprise. To familiarize Dengler with the local guards and teach him that the best strategy for survival is to keep his head down, De Bruin takes Dengler aside and leads him on a tour of the prison camp. Despite having free access to the camp in the mornings, the prisoners are kept inside the shack at night with their hands bound to one another and their feet ensnared in those cumbersome restraints. They can converse privately inside the shack without worrying about the guards overhearing them. Dengler tries to persuade the other prisoners to collaborate with him on an escape plan, but they reject his proposal. They explain that the rainy season is still a few months away and that the extreme tropical heat in the jungle makes it impossible for them to survive without any water. Not to mention that because they are being restrained, they should leave at night to avoid the guards. Dengler persists and persuades the group to assist him in obtaining a nail. Despite their skepticism, they follow his example and disperse throughout the camp, prompting the guards to pursue them. Dengler uses friendly conversation to divert the oblivious guard while stealing a nail from a beam. Later, at the shack, Dengler modifies the nail's pointy end using some rocks before using it to unlock their restraints. The prisoners can now enjoy some nighttime freedom and are more confident in Dengler's ability to devise a successful escape plan as a result. Fighter jets fly over the prison camp the following morning, infuriating the guards. One of the guards shoots Martin in a fit of rage. Fortunately, the bullet barely misses his head and only leaves a scar. After threatening to shoot the others, the guards play on their fear and tease the others. As the days go by, Dengler discovers more about his new friends, such as the fact that they saved the label from a can of beans in order to recall the aroma. They also relate tales of how they came to be pilots. De Bruin claims one evening that he doesn't believe Dengler can come up with a good plan and that he'll kill them all. De Bruin will scream and call the guards if Dengler or anyone else dares make an attempt at escape. The following day, a group of Vietnamese soldiers visit the camp and search the inmates for any useful information. Dengler gives his shaving glass to a female soldier after she finds it, and he flirts with her. He then expresses to the others his desire to have that girl and expresses his wish for peace and an end to the war. One of the guards suddenly loses control of his weapon, which starts shooting randomly. Dengler remains seated at the table and looks at the few rice grains that drop from a plate as everyone else runs for cover while he forms an idea. A few weeks later, the inmates surprise Dengler by singing him happy birthday and giving him an insect-based beverage. Dengler, moved by the act of kindness, chooses to return the favor. The friends who correctly guess which hands he is holding two crude knives and get to keep them after he first admits to making them out of old bullet casings. Then he admits that he has been keeping some of the rice hidden every day because he has finally come up with a new strategy. Dengler believes they should steal the weapons the guards leave behind when they go on lunch breaks, and use them to seize control of the prison camp until they can signal for help to the US helicopters. They have a little over a month left, so the prisoners decide to carry out the plan on July 4th to give it more significance. They start watching the guards from that point on, using Dengler's tiny mirror through the roof, to learn about their routines. They use wood and rocks to mark the locations of the guards and their weapons in order to memorize them. When a guard nearly busts them one night, they claim it was just a game they made up. The prisoners build an escape hatch at the floor of their shack using the knives Dengler made. Every night, Dengler discreetly exits through that hatch to make plans for the route they will take and to work on releasing a section of the perimeter fence. The prisoners observe that food is becoming even more scarce as the days go by, but the small guard Dengler befriended continues to save him a tiny ball of rice. They eventually stop bringing them real food and start serving them a bowl of worms. De Bruin says he'll eat his rice, but Dengler reminds him that he has the nail and won't release him from the handcuffs so that he can flee with them if De Bruin consumes the rice first. He doesn't mind eating the worms because he is so confident that his plan will succeed. They hear helicopters flying by one morning, but the guards shoot at the ground to intimidate them into silence. Martin breaks down after the guards leave, but Dengler assures him they'll be gone soon. YC once overhears some of the guards talking to one another. They learn that the guards intend to kill the prisoners and make it appear as though they were trying to escape thanks to YC's ability to translate into the local tongue. They appear to be fed up with the scarcity of food as well and are eager to return to their respective villages. They decide against waiting for their original date and instead carry out the plan the following day as a result. The prisoners begin their plan the following morning. Dengler, Martin, and the rest of them will be put into one group while De Bruin is put into the other. In order to defeat the guards, the two groups will depart in different directions and then converge at the same time in the kitchen. Before returning to the group, Dengler leaves the shack first and quickly gathers the weapons the guards had left behind. They split up into two groups once everyone has weapons, but when Dengler and Martin get to the kitchen, they are the only ones there, which isn't enough to take down a large group of soldiers. Fortunately, they act quickly and fire at the guards, killing all of them except for their little friend, who Dengler lets leave as a token of appreciation for the rice. Dengler and Martin steal as much food as they can and flee the camp after realizing they can't stay there as long as they had planned. They eventually run into De Bruin and YC, and Dengler becomes alarmed when he notices that the other two are missing while De Bruin is carrying extra ammunition and shoes. Dengler trades some ammunition for De Bruin's machete after De Bruin claims it was just a coincidence before the two groups split up. Dengler and Martin make their way into the jungle in an effort to reach freedom via Thailand. When the rainy season eventually arrives, Dengler and Martin can survive on their rice and water. Unfortunately, a mudslide surprises them from behind as they stop for lunch and drags them down the hill, taking their rice with it. They finally reach the river after a lot of walking, and inspired by the video, they construct a raft out of what they can find in nature. They initially float away in complete safety while hiding among the leaves, but sadly, the current carries them towards some rapids that lead to a waterfall. The raft is left to fall and be destroyed when it crashes into the rocks because Dengler and Martin see it just in time and swim toward the shore. The two continue their journey through the jungle over many days, spending the majority of their time drenched from the persistent rain. One afternoon, they find a bunch of liches hiding underneath their clothing, which they must painfully remove one at a time from their thin skin. Later, they see a man fishing nearby. Since shooting would draw the soldiers' attention, they choose to patiently wait for the fisherman to leave. They realize they are carrying weapons for no reason as a result, so they decide to get rid of the extra weight by throwing the weapons into the river. They come across an old shoe on the ground during this time, and Dengler lets Martin have it because he wants to do something to lift Martin's spirits, since he frequently feels weak and exhausted. The two find an abandoned village and stop there to rest after a long walk. A few US helicopters pass by at that precise moment, but despite Dengler's waves and cries, they don't notice him and continue on their way. Dengler tells Martin to rest while he starts a fire using the method he learned from the locals, burning the huts to produce a significant amount of smoke to signal the helicopters that Martin is beginning to lose his mind. Dengler must flee to survive because the Americans mistake them for enemies and open fire on them. Dengler and Martin decide to flee before they are discovered because the locals probably notice the smoke as well. Dengler must assist Martin in moving because he is too frail, so they ultimately decide to give themselves up at the closest village. They demonstrate their good intentions by asking the villagers for food, but they are not welcomed by them and Martin is killed right away. When the villagers flee in terror as a result of Dengler's irrational machete-waving outbursts, Dengler steals Martin's shoe and flees. Dengler manages to skulk in the bushes as the villagers close in on him. As the hours of the day pass, Dengler's exhaustion and hunger start to make him crazy, and he starts having hallucinations about Martin's ghost being with him. When he sees locals, Dengler stays near the riverbank and waits until they have left before stealing any food that may have been left behind. On other days, he goes animal hunting, even catching a snake to eat it raw at one point. A U.S. scout plane passes by one morning as Dengler waves a sizable leaf similar to the one in the video. At first, the plane appears to ignore him, but soon after, 2 helicopters show up and eventually save Dengler. Locals attempt to attack when they see the helicopters, but American soldiers shoot at them before taking off. Dengler's identity is verified by one of the soldiers, who also gives him a candy bar. Dengler is taken to a hospital to recover once they arrive at the U.S. base. Due to the nature of his mission, 2 CIA agents are constantly keeping an eye on him. They prevent him from telling anyone about his mission and repeatedly question him in an effort to learn more about it. Dengler is eager to join his original squad again, but the CIA forbids him from doing so. One afternoon, under the guise of Dengler's birthday, Dengler's team arrives with a birthday cake on a push cart and a letter from Dengler's fiancée. The squad executes their plan after the CIA agents agree to grant them some time to themselves to celebrate. The CIA agents observe the squad leaving the base with the push cart ashore, while later without suspecting anything. But as soon as they leave the base, they make Dengler board a helicopter after admitting they had been concealing him in the cart. After some time, Dengler returns to his beloved naval ship and is greeted by the entire crew, who burst into loud cheers to welcome him back.